Hello there and welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Meyers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And this is a guest we've had in before, but there's always so many new things and so many promising things in her horizon. I'm glad you got her back in here.
Well, we had to argue hard to get her back in. She was very reluctant. No, I'm teasing. Deb Shropshire is our guest today, the Director of Department of Human Services. She's not been on the show in that particular position because she's now the boss out at Department of Human Services, subject to whatever oversight that she may have. But she is got a lot on her plate. She's got a lot of interesting, fun things to talk about, some achievements that we want to highlight, and some challenges, and see what's in the future.
Well, and Oklahomans should care because, unfortunately, it's a very large aspect of the state's budget.
Well,
and as important as these services are, they need to be looked after by someone who is really responsible and knows what they're doing. And I think it'll be great for her to be on the show and explain all the great things DHS is doing for the state.
Good.
We'll be right back.
Right now, 6 feet can feel like a long ways away. But from 6 feet, we can still smile at each other. From our doorways and our stairways, from opposite sides of the street and opposite sides of the country. Through fear and frustrations, we can remind each other that we are still here for each other. Because we can still smile at each other. And we're not going anywhere.
Military service ran in my blood, starting from my father, which joined the Navy. On the Chickasaw side, my uncle, which served in the United States Army. I'm Benjamin Espinosa, Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy, and I'm Chickasaw. I went to the Secretary of Defense's staff at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., which ultimately led to becoming a combat support technician for Naval Special Warfare, specifically SEAL Team 10. I think to be proud and to love your tribe, to love being Chickasaw, you also have to love being American. You also have to love everything that America stands for. Equality, perseverance, professionalism, and power. I want my family to know that their father is a good person, but also feels that he has an obligation to the country and to love this nation. Anything worth having is worth dying for. The military and the country owes me nothing. I owe it everything.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Kent Meyers. Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Well, we're really pleased today to welcome back for her third appearance on The Verdict, Dr. Deborah Shropshire, who is Director of Department of Human Services. She's been on a couple of times before, but not in this particular position as DHS boss lady. She did her undergraduate work at Southern Nazarene University, did her medical work at the University of Oklahoma. She is a board-certified pediatrician. She is involved in child care and children at all aspects and all ages in her work with DHS, but she also worked at Children's Hospital for many years, actually hands-on treating children that needed some help. Gave her great perspective on particular problems, I think. We want to welcome her back and congratulate her on being named as Director of Department of Human Services, but also congratulations on the result on the Pinnacle Plan.
Oh, thank you. Very exciting news for us that have been working so hard in child welfare for so many years.
Well, let's hear it. Let's explain to the audience that may not know what Kent's referring to.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So
the story starts in 2012.
It probably actually starts before then in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a season of time leading up to 2012 where I think there was some recognition that the child welfare system needed to make some pretty significant improvements, some changes to ensure that kids were safe as they come into foster care, that there was an adequate number of foster homes, that the workforce was strong. And in the process, there was a lawsuit that the state settled in 2012 that led to really about a 10-year reform effort. And so we continue to work to improve, of course, but in the course of that 10 years, we've been monitored for our progress on the improvement plan, which is called the Pinnacle Plan. So we've been monitored by some external monitors who gave us a really great report on a big portion of those improvements.
Who are nationally known experts in the area.
They are nationally known experts, have led child welfare systems through their own reforms in other states, and have a lot of experience. And so,
well, pick one aspect of that success story and highlight it.
Yeah, for sure. I think we had to, you had to sort of figure out how to improve the system in layers. And so I would say we started very early in 2012 through about 2015 or 16 with really strengthening our workforce, having an adequate number of child welfare workers and having a caseload that was manageable. How can you get to supporting kids or supporting their families or their foster families or making sure that everybody's got what they need if you don't have a manageable caseload as a caseworker? Yeah. So that was a critical piece that the state really has invested in, the legislature invested in, we invested in, and just really were able to strengthen that workforce. And then you come alongside that with really strong response to foster home recruiting from our community. We're always going to be looking for and asking for more folks to step into fostering, but over the last 10 years, Oklahoma's had really historic foster home recruiting and families stepping into that, as well as relatives and family friends of kids who are needing a place to be stepping into that. And those two ingredients set the stage for many of the other improvements that we've experienced.
I would imagine running a Department of Human Services in an urban area is much different than running a DHS system in a rural area. And you spent some time in your childhood in rural Oklahoma, so you probably have a special and perhaps emotional aspect to knowing the needs. Can you speak to that, the difference between urban and rural and the services that you provide?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I think growing up in a very small town where we didn't have a lot of specific service providers, I think is still a common experience for small towns. In my town, it was actually the community who helped each other. And so local churches, teachers, etc., were the ones that often really strengthened families. They knew which families were struggling, who was hungry, and they stepped in and helped. I didn't grow up knowing anything about the Department of Human Services. Now, on the other side of that, what I actually enjoy is partnering our agency with those local communities, especially in the smaller, more rural areas of our state, and saying, hey, how can we as an agency add resources to you, what you're already doing in a local community? In urban areas, I think it feels a little different because people don't always know their neighbors. There tends to be a little bit more maybe service agencies who tend to deliver care. And we can get there in terms of strong families both ways. It's just a matter of figuring out, kind of what works best for that particular community. But I love small towns, rural towns, and I love partnering with those groups that are already serving kind of on the ground.
Well, the big event that we want to highlight just for a minute is the report just out from the three monitors, or co-neutrals as they're called, on what is the state of Oklahoma's system for taking care of abused and deprived children today as opposed to what it was when the lawsuit was filed. Can you bring us up to date? Where are we?
Yeah, I'm happy to bring us up to date on that. So when we started in 2012, there were really about 7 areas of improvement, about 30 particular metrics or measures that we were really trying to tackle. And we made steady progress on those over a number of years. COVID created its own special challenges because not only did it make some things harder for us to do, but it really impacted some other systems, such as the court system, mental health systems, et cetera.
Child visitation, a number of other things. And so we actually took the Pinnacle Plan and the reform efforts and split them into 2 parts.
during COVID, and we said, okay, there's a portion of these that we think we can control or we can continue to move forward full steam on, and there's another portion that maybe is going to take a little bit longer because it has there's multiple systems that are needing to recover. And in doing that, about 75% of the lawsuit was able to be recently exited. So we got a report last week, very exciting to us, that our monitors had said, hey, you have reformed this particular 75%, the 5 of the 7 areas, to the degree that we no longer need to comment on that or monitor those.
Well, and let me add, they also said, to your credit and your folks, that Oklahoma now has a model system.
They did.
For handling abused and deprived children. And that goes from a system they weren't very happy with when they first saw it to being a model system for the United States to follow.
How did you do that?
Oh, a lot of hard work, a lot of, again, laying those foundational pieces that I mentioned, a lot of listening to our own staff and communities tell us what they needed. A lot of our people who were on the ground already serving kids and families, they knew what they needed. We knew that we needed, again, better caseloads. We knew that we needed more partnerships. And doing some of those kinds of things over time has contributed. We also had to build a much better transparency into our system, much better understanding of our data so that we could target specific kinds of improvements and know if we were getting better. And so all of those are things that the co-neutrals really have highlighted in this most recent commentary.
Deb Shropshire runs DHS in the state of Oklahoma. We'll be right back with more on the verdict.
At Verge, we're litigators. That's all we do. All of our clients, some sort of wrong has occurred to them. We try to right that wrong. Corporate America, they have all the power. It's sort of like going against an army. I like helping the underdog. That's what gets me up out of bed every day.
Our success rate is phenomenal, but that's not all they get. We care about people.
I'm very proud of what we've been able to do for our clients, and I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in the future. There's still a lot of wrongs that need to be righted.
OU Law has a history and heritage that are unparalleled. At the University of Oklahoma College of Law, we empower our students to pursue the career of their dreams. We have the highest U.S. News ranking ever achieved by an Oklahoma law school. We are the first law school in the country to launch a college-wide digital initiative. And this year, our competition teams rank #2 in the nation. OU Law, generations of excellence, limitless possibilities.
When I came to work for the ODVA, I started realizing the opportunity to take care of veterans. It's a powerful thing when you realize that you are taking care of people that made history.
Working here is a calling. It's really, really important that they don't just come here to exist. We want to give them meaning to their lives. We try to make life happy and meaningful and fulfilled for our veterans.
Of the verdict, Kent and I are visiting with Deb Shropshire of DHS.
Deb, you have been, I guess, head of DHS since the first year, yes, approximately. Mm-hmm. And whose place did you take?
So Justin Brown was actually our director kind of during the first term of the governor. And he's actually who put me in the role as child welfare director, so I worked for him directly. He has also been serving as Secretary of Human Services. He stepped away from the director role a few months ago, and Samantha Galloway was serving as interim. We were all kind of teammates together. And he continues to serve as secretary while I've taken on this role.
Well, he's to get a pat on the back, I think, for the kind of report we just got from the co-neutrals.
He definitely is a guy who gave us a lot of room to try things. He's a very innovative leader, and I had the space to be able to come up with, and our team to come up with creative ideas and be supported. And that's really important. Child welfare is a role that sometimes doesn't always have that luxury, and I think that's been a tribute to him to set up the conditions for our success.
And those that went before him.
Yes, yes.
part of this improvement is a result of new strategies, but certainly it took more money, and the legislature is to be commended for stepping up and funding some of these improvements.
They really are. We would not have gotten off to even the beginning of this 10 years ago were it not for legislative support. And its support in funding, it's also some accountability. So we have folks that I always call to check in on how things are going. The fact that we have partners there who know our work, care about it, and push us to be better is also a really important piece of that. We could not do this work without a strong legislative support.
Is the size of your staff reflective on a population base with other states?
We have been well supported by our legislature, and some of the states that are struggling with their child welfare system don't have the same level of support that we do. I talk to states all the time. You mentioned that we've been identified as a model system, and what that means is that other states are calling us to ask how we've gotten to the place we've gotten to. Many states I talk to have not nearly enough staff. Their caseloads are too high, and that's creating problems for them and making improvements.
What changes took place during COVID that are still in place today because they seem to work or created an efficiency?
So I think we're still learning about that. So I just say this with a little bit of we're still trying to figure that out. But I can tell you we had some incredible experience with being able to do meetings virtually. Now, there's a lot of meetings that I think need to be in person, but working with families, having a dad, for example, be able to be involved in a meeting with a caseworker or a family team meeting on his lunch break while he's at work, instead of having to take off, drive to the office, perhaps lose a half a day of work or those kinds of things has been a big deal. And in fact, being able to leverage technology to engage relatives that may live in other places or services that may be in another place. We talked about rural Oklahoma having the ability to have teleservices, telehealth and things like that, mental health services to rural communities that didn't have access to those before is a game changer.
Now, this report freed you to some extent from the constraints of the Pinnacle Plan in 20 some odd areas, 23 areas. Does that mean then that you can just ignore those areas and just put all your work in on the remaining 7?
No, not at all. And the truth is, even when we're completely finished with this plan, we will continue to dig and strive toward better and better and better outcomes. But there's a couple of things. One is the remaining areas that are monitored will require continued intense focus and partnership with courts, with the mental health system, and other systems. But even the metrics that we've exited, we'll continue to publicly report on. We're continuing to build actually even better dashboards that are easier for public reporting, because we want to hold these measures. We don't want to just have been working on this for a decade and then say, okay, nothing to see here. We actually want to be publicly accountable to continue to improve as a child welfare system.
We know how Oklahoma ranks poorly on so many important categories, economics and health. If you could wave a magic wand and say, boy, I wish we could really work on this, it would make your job so much easier because you see the repercussions. What would that be? What from a social standpoint, what do Oklahomans really need to work on to not see the trickle-down effect that filters into your office?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's 2 things that I would say if we could figure out how to get these right, it would make a huge difference. One of those is really around poverty. And there's a lot of different ways to approach poverty. We do a lot of work with folks that don't have any resources, and we do a lot of work at helping people become more self-sufficient. The Department of Human Services. A second is really around mental health. And Oklahoma is a state that has a lot of trauma. It has a lot of generational trauma. It has a lot of trauma in families currently, in communities currently. And the effects of that result in lifelong illness, lifelong not great social outcomes, and those things are fixable. Both of those can be addressed, and there's more than one way to do it. So it's not really a political issue. It's really an issue that can be solved from lots of different perspectives, and it's definitely a space that I am passionate about and love. That's part of the reason I love serving in the Department of Human Services, because we're right in the middle of that.
Well, putting the children's issues aside just for the moment, you have responsibility in DHS for folks other than children. Can
Yes.
you expand on that?
I do. The Department of Human Services is made up of several service divisions. We serve more than 1 million Oklahomans. So many folks in our state are touched in some way by our services. We do serve children in the children's space in child welfare, child care licensing, child support, but also in the adult space in our safety net programs, again, that help families that are under-resourced, whether it's with food assistance or other kinds of assistance, work engagement programs, as well as our developmental disability space, which has been getting a lot of attention lately because of working on eliminating the waiting list. And then also a space that's about taking care of our elderly folks. So aging services and adult protective services. And that's a growing group. By 2030, folks over 65 are going to outnumber children in the state of Oklahoma.
Wow.
Good night. Well, what can our viewers do to make your life easier and make it more productive?
Right. Well, first of all, of course, my growing up in this work has been in child welfare. And so stepping into fostering or looking around and seeing who around in your life, in your school, your neighborhood, your church, has stepped into fostering, adopting, or supporting birth families and helping those folks would be one ask for sure. A second ask is many people may say, hey, that's not the space that I want to step into. Maybe I want to do something in one of these other areas. We have a strategic engagement team that we've built over the last few years that could work with businesses, with churches, with if you're a person that is involved in the Lions Club or involved in the Kiwanis Club or something along those lines, and you want to know other ways that you can get involved with our department, we will connect you. And so I've got something that pretty much everybody could do.
A number of employees, a number of college graduates finding employment inside of DHS. Is the talent pool there that you need? Are the Oklahoma universities producing the type of students and graduates that you need to continue the success?
That is a great question. So I would say, like many sectors, having an adequate workforce pool is a challenge for us. We have vacancies all the time, and not only do we, but our service providers do. So we contract with a number of organizations across the state to deliver services, and one of their greatest challenges is having an adequate workforce supply. So of course, I always tell people, I recruit my friends into this work. This is great, noble work to do. And if someone is looking for a field to step into, this is a great one.
How did you decide upon graduating from the University of Oklahoma with a medical degree to start in work helping children?
That's a great question. I didn't think I would be in pediatrics. I thought I would be an ER doctor. That's what I kind of dreamed about as a little kid. But what happened was, while I was doing my training, I happened to be around some child welfare staff, around a court that was meeting with parents around a foster care case. And I really fell in love with the adults who serve in that space. I kind of fell in love with social workers. And so I stepped into pediatrics so I could get closer to that field. And then over the years, I sort of jokingly tell my staff I've kind of infiltrated the Department of Human Services, and they haven't thrown me out. They've kept me, and I just want to serve them as well as I can. I love our team. It's, again, I said it was noble work, and it is. I believe that. And so I want to serve our team well, because I think if our team is strong and healthy and equipped, then they will serve the Oklahomans that we're encountering well.
We got about 30 or 40 seconds left. We haven't spent a lot of time on aging Oklahomans. Right. What can you tell us about that briefly? Yeah, so what I would tell you is we're actually at the beginning of about an 18 to 24 month process right now, working with a number of others on a multi-sector plan on aging. And so the idea there is that we gather a number of providers and other agencies together, and that we've got to produce some sort of a roadmap for our state and how to serve our aging population. And so we may be reaching out to various communities that are watching this. If we do, please join us, and also look for, over the next year to 2 years, a better roadmap for the state. Dr. Deborah Shropshire runs the Department of Human Services for the state of Oklahoma. Thanks
and very
so much.
Well.
Yeah. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for coming on The Verdict. Thank you for having me. Kent and I'll have a final word after this.
This is the epidemic of my generation. This is my HIV. This is my Black Plague.
In the midst of one of our state's largest crises,
Oklahomans are dying from this preventable and treatable disease on a daily basis.
we believe there's hope.
That little pill will cause destruction through your whole life.
Watch the entire award-winning 9-part docuseries Killing Pain, made available by Fighting Addiction Through Education at killingpain.com.
It used to be okay in teachers' lounges. It used to be okay in maternity wards. It was okay in sporting arenas, college campuses, and office spaces. But now that we understand the deadly dangers of secondhand smoke, that's not okay anymore. So why is it okay that thousands of employees are exposed to it every day at work? Bottom line, it's not okay. Let's protect hardworking Oklahomans. Join the fight at stopswithme.com.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
Shropshire is a great guest. Kate, you've been working in this space for a long time.
Yes, yeah, she is a terrific find by the folks that make such finds, and she's certainly got her heart into this and does a grand job.
Well, some great work, and I'm glad she highlighted foster care, because if people at home are wondering how they can get involved and help, that's one way. Support a foster parent or be one yourself.
Yes.
Some website information. You can get more information from Deb at oklahoma.gov/OKDHS. And we have a website where you can log on and tell us about a guest you'd like to see or a subject you'd like to see discussed. That website is theverdict.tv. That's going to do it for this week. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.